Welcome to the Cybersecurity Simplified podcast, where we take the mystery out of today's top security threats and solutions. To pay or not to pay, that's the question when it comes to ransomware. Is it better to hold your ground and discourage future data hostage situations, or pay up and cut your losses? Recently, some cyber insurance companies have switched sides in the debate, refusing to reimburse ransomware payments to cybercriminals. In this episode of Cybersecurity Simplified, we'll discuss this trend and what it means for the future of cybersecurity risk strategies. I'm your co-host, Susanna Song, Head of Communications at Highwire Networks.
And I'm Dave Barton, Chief Technology Officer, also co-host at Highwire Networks.
David, when we ended episode 11, we probably could have gone for another 30 minutes chatting about the predicament so many businesses today are finding themselves in when they realize, I've been hit with a ransomware attack. And so we talked a lot about, do you pay, do you not? And I think you just hit the nail on the head when you answer that question. Can you summarize it for those of us who didn't hear that last episode?
So just to plug our podcast, if you haven't heard it yet, go back and listen to it because I think there were some really good nuggets in there. But, fundamentally, the problem's not stopping. It's a multi-billion-dollar issue, and the bad guys are getting paid. And my response to the question really revolved around business continuity. Can you afford not to pay? Mm-hmm. Right? At the end of the day, if we have people who've been impacted by ransomware and they've done most of the right things, then their opportunity to recover without a payment might exist. But I can tell you just from all the people I've talked to through the years, we don't do a great job at basic blocking and tackling of security issues. Therefore, when ransomware does hit, we're at risk. Our companies are at risk. We've got data that gets compromised, and we don't have a choice. And if you're a mid-market SMB company, there's a pretty good chance you have to pay to keep your doors open. Now, the challenge, which leads into our conversation with Tom, is cyber insurance going to be enough to protect you? And with that, Susanna?
Yeah, let's introduce our guest. For those of you listening, you don't realize that there's a third person in the room. Those of you who watch us on YouTube, we have a friendly face here joining our podcast today, Tom Wetzel, founder of Wetzel and Associates. And we brought him in because he is a consultant to various cyber insurance agents and agencies. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been working in the digital marketing space for close to 3 decades. I counsel insurance companies and primarily independent insurance agents about a variety of issues. But in the last 3 or 4 years, no surprise, cybersecurity has been a primary focus. I write a regular column in one of the insurance publications, and I teach cybersecurity and insurance issues on a fairly regular basis.
Awesome. Companies right now are relying on their cyber insurance policies to pay off ransomware criminals. And they're being blamed for a recent uptick, actually, in ransomware attacks. Can you provide kind of some information and shed light on what does a cyber insurance policy cover today? Typically, what's covered in a policy?
That's a great question, Susanna, because in point of fact, when you've read one cyber insurance policy, you've read just one. The industry is in the process of standardizing the language and what's covered and what's not covered in their companies, but it's not standardized yet. So why it's very important to choose an agent who understands cyber coverages and carriers who understand it in detail, because the coverages are going to vary significantly, what's covered or what's not, the limits. So it's absolutely vital that you talk to people who understand the issue, because it's evolving very quickly. The industry is evolving on the cyber insurance issue very rapidly.
Mhm.
And we can get into specifics there.
Yeah. And so, Tom, to that extent, what are you seeing specific to ransomware and either being covered, not being covered, any due diligence requirements? What do you see those trends as today?
Well, the key thing is that ransomware is it's the biggest part of cyber claims, the biggest segment, but it's not the only one. And just because you think you've got your coverage for ransomware means, are you really covered? And the answer is no. I think the biggest problem for companies who are looking to get cyber coverage is they think it's going to be basically transfer the risk to the insurance company. You're going to pay for all our losses. And the insurance companies are reacting to this, and they base their policies and their limits on statistics. And what they're finding is cyber claims are going up quickly. In response, insurance companies are not only raising rates, raising the premiums that you pay, but they're also requiring an insured, a policyholder, to do a better job on their own on cybersecurity. They're not automatically going to cover you for everything or the limits that you're looking for unless you're doing a better job of protecting yourself. It's about making yourself insurable, and that's true in any kind of insurance. If a company, a small business has an auto repair shop, for example, that has lots of oil spills all over their shop floor, and a lot of employees slip and fall, and there are a lot of workers' comp claims as a result, you're going to pay more for insurance. Well, if your vulnerabilities are higher and you're not really doing anything to protect yourself against cyber crimes, then the insurance company is just decide, no, we're not interested in insuring you, or you're going to pay a heck of a lot more for that coverage.
Mm-hmm. In the first half of 2020, ransomware attacks accounted for 41% of the total number of filed cyber insurance claims. That is according to a cyber claims insurance report released last year by Coalition. I was listening to NPR this morning, and there was a great story, a fascinating story about ransomware as a service and how bad actors are now creating a business model around this lucrative crime. I'm curious. You say, Tom, that the insurance policies are changing rapidly. Are you saying that they possibly won't cover ransomware or extortion coverage ever? Or, I mean, when you say it's changing, how will that look?
It's
In the coming
changing.
years?
Well, it's changing in a couple of ways. The short answer is no. They're not going to all suddenly say, "Oh, we're not covering ransomware." What they are going to do is they're going to raise the premiums, but they're also going to require the policyholder to perform certain functions on their side. What are you doing to protect yourself against ransomware? Do you understand your risk? Are you conducting security awareness training on behalf of your employees? Are you taking proactive measures to prevent cyber events from occurring in the first place? And that will be a condition on which they are going to cover you and continue to cover you at a certain level.
So, Tom, kind of a side question there. With PCI, we saw the emergence of a standard around auditability and requirements around data protection. And then healthcare started their thing with HIPAA. We've seen a lot of movement in the SHIELD Act in New York and CCPA in California. And then we go across the pond to Europe, GDPR, and there's more and more legislation that's happening around protecting data. Do you see the insurance companies thinking about this? Are they talking about this? Is there a standard that folks should be focused on if they want to A, reduce claims, and B, reduce their premiums?
Absolutely. And they're not just talking about it, they're taking concrete steps to require policyholders and insurance agents to do a better job. Specifically, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners has put together a data security model law, which has been passed in 14 states. The New York has a very much higher standard of data security requirements, which is largely considered the gold standard in the industry,
Right.
and being and encouraging agents and policyholders to follow it. And that places a very high priority on data security. But in addition to that, insurance companies are now revising their agreements, their contractual agreements with their independent insurance agency partners to do a better job on data security. The analogy I describe is insurance companies believe that their agents are their weakest link, that we're only as secure as our weakest link in the digital ecosystem chain, and you're it. So you're going to have to do a better job. On the flip side, the insurance companies realize they have to do a better job themselves. It's not just blaming it on the agents. I mean, the insurance companies have a lot of vulnerabilities in which they're doing a lot better job. In fact, there's a new, just announced in the last couple of days, a new consortium of cyber insurance companies who have come together to push for stronger regulations and better risk mitigation efforts across the board. So they're taking it very seriously.
Tom, you brought up a good point that really insurance agencies should be pushing businesses to do the bare minimum, security hygiene, in order to mitigate risk. What do you recommend when you talk with cyber insurance companies and they're addressing businesses? What do you recommend businesses to do?
Well, the first thing is to understand their risk, and because the vast majority, I would argue, probably do not. What their vulnerabilities are, and they're significant, not just for themselves, but for their the vendors they use outside. They understand the digital ecosystem that we live in, and we all dependent on third parties. So that's the first thing. Just understand the problem, and then find a good secure cybersecurity partner that they can work with. And find a cyber insurance company, a company that has a specialty in cyber insurance that can offer you a variety of services, not just after the fact, after a claim, after a breach, but also before. And many of them are starting to require that you do a better job up front to prevent breaches from happening in the first place before they will consider you as a policyholder and then require you for that due diligence going forward.
Right. So, Suzanne, I'm going to echo those comments. I think what I'm seeing in the industry is insurance companies are asking for a program, right? Their policyholders need to have a cybersecurity program, which Tom talked about. Which is tied to that having an emphasis and understanding they need it, right? That's number one. Number two is they need a framework or a program that they can build a cybersecurity around, right? Like a NIST is a great one for folks who are just thinking about it. I think number three is with our work from home model that we've all gone to. You've got to have tools to protect the data wherever it is. And in most cases, we've got it at home, but you don't have the controls there traditionally. So having a strong next-gen endpoint play has got to factor in. And then I think to Tom's point, having a partner that can watch and respond at 2 a.m., all of those things tie into a well-defined security program that when the insurance company says, hey, Tom, show me your program so that I can pay your claim, Tom can pull out all of his logs and his reports and his evidence, and insurance companies will pay him.
Are you guys surprised it's taken the cyber insurance industry this long after paying out how many times, especially in 2020, millions of dollars, that finally they're rethinking their strategy?
So I don't know that it's taken as long as we think it has. Back in 2016, I spoke at a Gartner event, and I talked about ransomware and some of my predictions around where cyber insurance was going. And I said, within 2 years, we're going to see claims getting denied because people aren't doing the due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening, right? That happens all the time. I think what we're starting to see more of and hear more of is the teeth, right? We've had ransomware forever. We talked about this last week, but most companies have been hesitant to say, oh, by the way, we got ransomware. The only reason we're seeing it now is we've had 2 really high profile cases that is drawing the attention. And now everybody from a legislative perspective is going, oh, we got to fix this. And insurance companies who paid $4 million for the Colonial Pipeline ransomware event are going, wait a minute, you guys knew you had breach capability or problems that could lead to a breach and you did nothing. So there's some negligence. So from an insurance company, I'm going to go, hold on, I'm not paying. So I'm surprised, Susanna, that it hasn't moved to the forefront of our society yet. But multi-billion-dollar ransomware cybersecurity is a problem, and we have to get better at it.
And we have to make sure that the smaller business understand that they're just as vulnerable as large ones are.
That's right. Probably more so, Tom, because they don't have the investment.
Exactly.
Yeah, one final question as we wrap things up, both Tom and David. What is the best scenario, in your opinion, for a business to be protected by cyber insurance, to have a policy, and also for just kind of due diligence? If you guys can sum it up, as a business leaders listening and watching, how should they tackle this?
Go ahead, Tom.
I would say that the first of all is don't consider cyber insurance as the solution by itself. It's not a risk you're not transferring the risk to the insurance company. Oh, well, you're just going to pay for it.
That's right.
That attitude, you put that out of your mind.
Yeah.
Because the insurance companies are going to tell you up front, you have to do a better job of preventing breaches in the first place. Otherwise, we may not insure you, or you're certainly not going to get the limits that you think you want. And the second thing is really take a look at, compare policies and compare insurance companies, and have an insurance consultant that really understands the issues and can walk you through them, because it's complex and it's changing, and it's too important a coverage now to take it lightly.
That's right. Yeah, and I think I'll just restate a couple of my suggestions. One is take it serious. To Tom's point, teach your people how to identify the things that lead to ransomware, right? Clicking on links, opening files. Awareness has got to be top of list. Look for ways to move the preventative controls closer to the data, where you've got a next-gen endpoint or something along that line. And then finally, I think we led with this early on, find a partner who, not just an insurance partner who understands the insurance piece, but a cybersecurity partner who can help you navigate cybersecurity. Because, those two things together will get you a whole lot closer to, A, not needing a payout, but B, if you do, making sure that you're equipped to get it.
Awesome. Thank you to both David and Tom Wetzel of Wetzel and Associates for joining us in this episode around cyber insurance and ransomware attacks. If you have any feedback about today's podcast or questions for David or myself, please reach out, and be sure to join us for our next episode, The Patch Makeover. Until next time, I'm Susanna Song.
And I'm Dave Barton.
And this is Cybersecurity Simplified. From all of us here at Overwatch by Highwire Networks, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Cybersecurity Simplified podcast. To learn more, visit us at highwirenetworks.com/podcast.